Uh, real quick, welcome to Pat, Mia. We'll kick off this whole ordeal here and chat a little bit today. But real quick, this is the Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast. I'm stoked to chat with Pat and Mia and give a little bit of our 2 cents on the HYROX race that we did this past weekend. Hopefully, shed some light on things that we learned and just general kind of take. I do, however, want to introduce Pat a little bit. Pat, I'm going to have you kind of chat about like what you do and what you're about to. Thankfully, a lot of the people here already know Mia, but just give us a little background of who you are, and then we can kind of get into how the race weekend kind of went after that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Blaise. Uh, Went to the Coast Guard Academy with the Blaise Curtis. We were swabs together. So we our first day at the academy met each other and graduated with Blaise. Did 5 years as a junior officer in the Coast Guard. Separated pretty much immediately when I hit the 5 year mark and my contract ended. So a bit of a different path than Blaise being a pilot, and have been a financial advisor now for 2 years, and pretty much for the most part work with people in the military and veterans and help them with their financial planning. And I live in Los Angeles with my wife. I just got married in January.
Whoop, whoop.
No.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. That's another thing that I guess I should probably do a quick plug for you. Pat is my money guy. So if anybody's looking for a person I wouldn't put that recommendation out lightly. Pat and his business partner Alex are awesome. So definitely somebody that I've learned a ton from and will continue to positively endorse as much as possible. So appreciate that, dude. Uh, Mia, talk to me about the race, man. I wanna hear your take about like pre-race jitters, because you had an interesting start time and kind of the way that your day flew by.
Yeah, I think just for those of you who don't know, they kind of did like staggered starts. So the guys started, I think you guys started at like 11:40 or something.
Maybe actually, how about this? Talk to us about the race format first. That way, like for people that don't know what a high rocks is, because Pat probably had to explain it about 50 times at his party the night before. So
Yeah, so HYROX is essentially, I guess it's like a functional fitness competition, which combines running and various movements. So you start with a 1,000-meter run, and then there's 8 different stations that you'll cycle through. And then between each station, it's that 1,000-meter run. So you end up running an 8K, which is about, I think it's a little bit less than 5 miles if you do the math. And then the stations are, you have 1,000-meter ski erg, 100-meter, or was it 100 or 50-meter sled push and pull? I can't remember on that one.
It was
Anyway,
it felt like 100, but it was 50. Yeah.
it felt forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100-meter sled push and then 100-meter sled pull. You have an 80-meter burpee broad jump, which was literally just hell on earth. What came after that? Oh, 1,000-meter row, and 200-meter farmer's carry, 100 meters of walking sandbag lunges, and then wall balls at the end. So a lot of movements. It's definitely, you have a high heart rate the whole time. You never really get a break since you're basically going from station to run to station to run. So it's challenging in that sense. And each of the movements too are just kind of grueling, and you don't really ever feel like you're kind of getting a break throughout the entire race.
yeah, so you started getting into like your starting thing of like stagger starts and times. You should hit on like kind of how that went for you throughout the day.
Yeah, so because it's all in an indoor arena, so there's only so much space and there's only so many pieces of equipment, so they kind of had to stagger everyone throughout the day. So the guys got to start early at like 11:40, which really for a race is still kind of late. But I didn't start until 3:20 in the afternoon, so I got to watch them all compete, kind of hear their take, watch watch them enter the pain cave, see the pain on their faces, and know that this is what I have to do in a few hours. So it was kind of interesting in that regard because I'm used to waking up and racing and then kind of being done, but I had the entire day just to kind of try and not get in my head, kind of stay locked in, and also get to support everyone, which was cool that I got to see everyone race as well. But it was definitely interesting, kind of having to plan, you know, all your eating, making sure that you're eating enough, but not eating too close to the race. And then by the time it's your time to go, you're kind of just stoked and ready to go, but you also have been building up nerves since you woke up that morning at like 8 o'clock. So it was a lot. It was a long day for sure. But I'm happy with the fact that I did get to go a little bit later because it kind of gave me the chance to really see how everyone else was doing, understand the course a little bit better, and kind of set my mindset right, and allow myself to kind of get the race that I wanted done.
Yeah, and you crushed, dude. You went really fast. So, Patty, talk to me about your how you felt about the race, man. Preparation, and I guess Mia, I'll come back to you too about like your personal prep after that or before the race to kind of get ready. But I want Pat to talk about his beach training montage a little bit.
Yeah, I had justified in my head. I don't need to like use a sled or use a ski erg. I'll just like go for some runs and do some kettlebell swings on the beach, and I'll be good to go. Um, I pushed the sled the first length. I was like, man, I made a mistake. I should have trained with a sled. I was like, this is like terrible. So I did the first three stations, like Mia was saying. Ski erg, didn't train that at all. Sled push, sled pull, didn't train any of those. I was like zapped after like the first three. In my head, I'm like, I hope I can finish this. You know, my in-laws are watching me. This will be embarrassing if I don't finish it. But I practiced the burpees and the wall balls pretty consistently. So I I was concerned about the first three stations. Like once I got through the first three stations, I felt pretty like confident about it after that. It was a blast, man. It was a lot of fun. And there's no need to take caffeine before you do that race because your heart rate is like up immediately. So
Yeah, so I drove down to LA on Friday and basically sat with Pat in cold water for 2 days straight before we got in there and didn't touch a weight. And my personal take on the race was that it was definitely grueling and long. It felt like you were sprinting for an hour and, you know, a half or whatever it ended up being. Um, I don't think that I would personally train anything differently. I think I would have just like changed the volume of how often I was doing it because I felt like it was like it would have been more beneficial to do it more often. What did you guys think? Did you feel like prepared based on what you're doing? Yeah, it's good for you, dude. You came off the half Ironman. I feel like you were like kind of ready to rock with this cadence of this race. What did you think about how you were prepared?
I think like yes and no. Like I felt like I had a pretty well built engine since I had done so much running, and I'd also done a lot of like compromised running in Ironman training, so I think that was really helpful. But the difference between that and then HYROX was with the Ironman, you have to last like 6 hours. So you're trying to keep your heart rate relatively low, and it's a game of endurance. This HYROX was like a game of endurance, but your heart rate is about at 165 the entire time. And so it's kind of training. Like, I think what I would have done differently is more high heart rate training. So more like hit and doing more burpees and wall balls and stuff like that. Like I did a lot of running, so I felt really confident in that. But I think getting your body used to operating at that super high heart rate would have been more beneficial. And that's something that for the next one, because now Ben really wants to do one. So I'm sure I'll be suckered into doing another one. I would definitely do more like high heart rate training, but other than that, I think the way that I trained was pretty good. Just getting used to operating at that high heart rate.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the same though. Like the allure now that I'm done, it makes me want to come back. But in the moment, if you were asking me in the middle of a burpee broad jump, maybe about halfway through, I'd have been like, I'm never doing this again. So I'm sure you guys can relate too. Do we think like the race was what we expected? Like, do you feel like when you finally hit the pavement, you started kind of like rolling around the track, like you were like, oh yeah, I expected this to be this hard, or what did it like surprise you at how difficult it was?
it was. I think I was pretty taken back by the event itself. It's just like a very cool event. It's really well run. The race itself, it's kind of like what I expected. It's just total like chaos for an hour and some change, you know. Um, yeah, it was just a great time. It was a lot of fun. I'll definitely do it again.
Yeah, I think like I was honestly surprised with like the things that I thought were going to be hard, I found easy. Like I found the sled push to be easier than I expected. But then I found things like the rower and the um wall balls to be a lot harder than I expected. So it's kind of like I was incorrect in my assumptions of what was going to be hard and what was going to be easy. And then I think I also fell into the trap of HYROX TikTok and Instagram where everyone's like, don't walk in the rock zone and all this stuff. And I was like, there's no, I had a whole plan of like not walking, not doing any of that. And kind of the plan went to the wayside when you realize how tired you are and you kind of just need to catch your breath for a second.
Dude, and let's talk about like the big supporters that came out, dude. Pat had like a whole entourage out there, dude. He had like 7 family members. Mia had Ben coming out taking pictures. I feel like, and Brady too, who couldn't join us today, but we'll definitely like have him on to chat about it a little later. But it was awesome to see like every time you ran around the track, it was like you would see somebody that you knew and they were like going to give you a word of encouragement or cheer you on, or Ben was snapping like a bazillion photos. We thought he was a professional sports photographer out there. How did that feel when you guys were coming around to have some support out there?
Yeah, it made the pain go away for about 2 seconds, and then once you ran past them, it came back. No, it was awesome. It was really cool. It's cool how you're not like locked in one spot when you're watching the race too. So after, a couple rounds, like where you're gonna see friends and family when you're running, and then they walk over to watch you suffer at whatever workout station that you're at throughout the race. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think like in addition to that, having everyone yelling and the fact that it's like a closed arena, it's just that much louder. The energy is like all there. It's super exciting. And then when you hear like your name, you're like, okay, cool. Like I can keep going for a little bit longer. And then also knowing that, Ben has his big long camera in your face and there's gonna be pictures, you gotta look like you're kind of enjoying yourself. So I think that helped a lot. It was kind of funny too. I think I told you guys like I was running at one point and so you guys were like, go Mia, like you got it. And then the girl in front of me when I was running was like, how do they know my name? And I was just kind of like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna let you have this one, girl. Like let's just all think that they're cheering for you. Cause it was just cool to see that she was so excited. And I don't know, it's just a really cool environment. And it's definitely different than any other race that I've ever done.
Yeah, I'm curious, like for those of you that don't know, the way that the race is kind of structured is like almost like a track loop around the outside. So you can almost imagine like a 400-meter track, like standard track, and then all of the events are almost in the interior part. So like if you're at a standard, I don't know, high school football stadium or something, it would be all in the grass of the stadium where each of the stations were. So it was pretty cool how they made it to be like observers could essentially come in and see it. And it was like really really neat how that thing came about. But I'm curious for you two, because you both are runners, I would say much more than me. How different was it from like a traditional, like your half Ironman, Mia, and then Pat, you've done a couple like half marathons too. Like how would they compare as far as effort and then like energy and all those types of things?
Yeah. I'll be curious to hear Mia's answer to this too. It's like the half marathon for me is you're gonna run 13 miles. I'm trying to hold the same pace for like every mile throughout the race. So it's like the heart rate just goes up slowly over the course of the race. And then it gets to a point where your heart rate's like really high for the last couple miles and you're like suffering your way through it. So it's like a slow burn. Um, and I felt more sore after my half marathon than I did this. But HYROX is you run out of the tunnel and you've done like half a lap and your heart rate's like through the roof immediately, and then you're pushing a sled and then you're running. So it's roughly around the same amount of time that a half marathon takes. But when I look at my watch and I look at what my heart rate does for like a half marathon, where it's just a steady incline, and then I looked at it for the HYROX and it's just sky high the whole time. I'd say that's the biggest difference is just the intensity throughout the HYROX is a lot higher.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think like with the longer endurance, it's more just about being able to endure for longer periods of time. So just trying to keep your heart rate as low as possible and making sure that you can sustain this effort. And I feel like my mentality was almost different for the Ironman versus this. Like with the Ironman, it was like, okay, I just got to do it. Like it's gonna be long, it's gonna take time, but like I know that I can like handle this and I'm gonna eat food along the way. But with like HYROX, it was like I just want to be done with this station and then just get on to the next one. So it's kind of like a just kind of powering through it instead of like that enduring feeling. But it was similar in the sense that it's like you have to finish one event to get to the next. So sometimes you're like, I just want to be done running, but knowing that then you have a station at the end of the day. So it was similar, like, okay, I just want to be done swimming, and then you head to the bike. But yeah, I think it's just that long enduring, like being able to endure long periods of time versus, that full on send it, try and get this done as fast as possible.
Mia, I guess this is a question for you. Did you feel like you wish that you'd have fueled like kind of like Ironman style where I saw a couple and I kind of fell prey to it too, like the algorithm man that Instagram always knows, but it was like feeding me like HYROX tips for like a couple weeks beforehand. And I'm curious, like a couple of those were like, hey, have a gel. And I actually saw some guys out there that were racing not in the professional division, but in the open division that were like taking a gel after I think we did burpees. I want to say there was a guy that was taking some, and that might have been what the suggestion was. So is that something that you wish that you did? And Pat, I don't actually know if you take gels when you do that half iron or the half marathons, but you may. But is that something that you guys wish that you had thought of or trained to have with you?
I feel like I would have thrown up if I tried to put food in my mouth. So I'm happy I didn't, but I also think I had the advantage of like having all day to fuel instead of like it being super early and not being able to like stomach a lot of food. So I almost felt like I like ate too much because I think halfway through I started to feel like my stomach wasn't super settled. So I'm glad that I didn't. But I think like if I were to have cramped or something, it would have helped a lot just to get like those electrolytes in and everything.
Yeah, I burned the same amount of calories I would burn doing a half marathon. I checked it on my watch. We were at Blaise, we were making fun of people who were going to take gels the day before. Like a gel, it's like an hour workout. Like, that's ridiculous. And then I saw a gel, someone like threw it on the floor. I was like, that would probably be pretty nice right about now.
And you
I
went full bore and just grabbed it off the ground and
Yeah, and
just
licked it. Yeah,
just ripped it, dude.
I would entertain the idea of it. If I do it again, I'll have it, and then if I need it, I know I can take it. But I'm not gonna like say after I get off the burpees or after I get off the rower. Probably doing it like during the rower would make sense because that's a little bit of an easier movement for me where my heart rate's coming down. I can take a gel, do the row, and like get back to it. I think it's a legit strategy within it. But like Mia was saying, everyone's different. Like some people that stuff comes right out. It doesn't sit well in your stomach. So it just depends.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, like Mia and Pat both beat me in the race. They were both moving. Probably I think Pat and Mia both beat me by like 3 or 4 minutes apiece. But when when I was coming through a couple of the stations, I was thinking to myself, like, man, I wonder if I had a gel or something right now, it would have helped because my quads were cramping up. Like right as I finished the burpees and I'm about to go run, and then I'm like, oh, dude, I still have to do walking lunges. I still have to do wall balls, and my legs are like, my quads are like, oh, I don't know if it's gonna happen. So it's really interesting how like I was thinking about it too in the moment, and every time I walked past, they had like a water station essentially set up pretty neutral to all the interior parts of the stadium there. And I was like, man, every single time I passed that, I slammed a like Gatorade, and then a couple of times dumped some water on my head. Pat said that every time he drank a water and dumped the water and just kept ripping it. But yeah, I think it'd be a really interesting strategy. And just so everybody's aware, like the people that are there are like professionals in HYROX, which I had no idea that existed until, obviously there's professionals everything, I guess I probably should have known. But there's guys that did that same race that we did with heavier weights. And they did it in 56 minutes, which is like a half hour faster than what I did it, almost, maybe a little less than that. And then like 20 to 30 minutes faster than pretty much everybody else. And they were moving. Like it looked like a track meet around the outside. We did the math, and there's people running at a 5:30 mile pace along the outside for every single like thing when they're running for the whole like 5 miles. And then the interior parts of the movements when they're going through, they're just like cooking at an unreal clip. So I don't know, we actually stayed, and maybe one of you guys could talk about it too, but I felt like when we stayed and watched them like come around the corner for that first section, it was like watching like a pack of dogs like running down towards us. It was unreal.
Yeah, they were crazy. And then also kudos to the people who did it with a weighted vest. I think like you have to be insane to put a weighted vest on and then do all these movements with the same exact weight too. Like I just remember seeing those people and I was like, what possessed you to like want to make this that much harder? But Ben and I were like, let's figure out a way to get on the podium. And if you do mixed doubles with a GoRuck, there are only 4 teams. So you just got to be one team. So maybe that's the strategy. You know, if you really want a podium, put a GoRuck on.
You can have that podium, dude. I'm all set. You're possessed if you're doing that with a weighted vest or a GoRuck on. That's just insane to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually saw a guy, and I think it was almost like we were like trading places. Like I would beat him in the functional movement section, and then he would pass me on the run with the ruck on. And I was just like, God, dude, I'm just cooking, and I feel like I'm moving fast, and this guy just like prances by me like a gazelle, ruck and all. And I was like, geez Louise, man, that ruined my day for sure. What do we think as far as like, I meant to say too, there was 3,300 total athletes, I think. I want to say I looked at Mia. I want to say that you got like 5th in your age range, I think. I think I took a peek at it. And I know Pat, I want to say that you were like pretty high up there as well. Like as far as your general like demographic for those races, do we think that they were like, you know, who is that catered for? I guess like if somebody's listening objectively and they're like, oh, maybe I'd check out like a HYROX event. Like, are you pulling somebody off the street to go compete in HYROX and hoping to, you know, finish and or compete at all? Or are you thinking like, hey, this is something that you should probably take a really good look in the mirror and be like, train more for, as if it were half marathon or marathon training, or, you know, Ironman training? Like, talk to me about your takes on that.
Yeah, I would not, if someone hasn't been like running consistently, which Blaise, I know you weren't. So you crushed it for the amount of running you did like beforehand. I would say at least be able to run 10K or like 10 miles comfortably and not be like completely dead. So somewhere between 10K to like 10 miles comfortably and not be completely dead. And then you know, in the gym a couple times a week. But you got to be able to run comfortably for that distance and not, you know, not be able to get out of bed the next day. I wouldn't just I wouldn't, you can sign up and like slug your way through like a 10K or a half marathon. You can't fake it through a HYROX. I think it's harder than a half marathon personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I think I had seen and heard from a lot of people that it's definitely a runner's race, because if you think about it, like 5 miles isn't chump change. If you're running at an 8-minute pace, you're still running for 40 minutes. Like, that's a lot of running. And then adding into that, like, you're not resting in between each lap. You're doing these movements that are also going to keep your heart rate up. So I think definitely like someone who prioritizes running will have an easier time with it. Just since they're used to that kind of endurance. But I think if you're someone who hits the gym, like, you're going to have that strength. It's just going to be building that conditioning up to be able to sustain all the running. But it was super impressive. I mean, you see there were people out there that were, I mean, like older than me that were finishing at the same time as me, and to see like that you can really do this at any age, like was encouraging to me, like there's no, I kind of think it's interesting. Like one thing I've noticed between Ironman and this is that my age group, the 25 to 29, is one of the smaller age groups. Like the 30 to 40 is where you'll see a lot of athletes, which I never really thought people in in that age range would be competing as much as they do, but that's really going to be like where you see most of the athletes falling. So it doesn't really matter how old you are. Like if you have the discipline and the motivation, like you're going to be able to succeed. I mean, people that were older than me beat me, and like that's incredible. Like kudos to them, and good for them for continuing to push themselves throughout their entire life. So
There
Yeah.
was a guy in our heat place. I don't know if you recognize him. He had the backwards hat, and he had like the tattoo right here. He was an older guy. He was in like his 40s. He came out the blocks cooking. I ran like, he had to be in his 40s. I ran one lap with him and I never saw him again. Like he was flying. So
Yeah, and also there, I want to shout out, and I wish I got the guy's name. There was a guy with like cerebral palsy that was doing the race too, with like the full like, I don't know the technical term for the like crutches that kind of go around the forearms, and he was in our heat as well, almost like speed walking around the outside, and did like the entire race, which is just absolutely bananas, that he was able to do that. Uh, it's just crazy. And I will say too, Pat, when I was training for this, and some people may or may not know this, but I've been having like foot issues and like foot pain basically from impact training, which was the reason that I couldn't really run a ton as I'm like building up to get ready for this race that I, pumped out $150 or whatever it was to do anyway. So I had to like really get creative with my training splits of like, hey, I'm going to use like an assault bike or an echo bike, or I'm going to use a rower. I'm going to like try and utilize, barbell movements, whatever, to kind of work into that HIIT style of training. So if you're somebody that like is struggling to, you have an impact injury, or you're somebody who's like struggling to run or any of those types of things, I'd say knees are another thing that could potentially hinder you. Definitely like, look into alternate means so that you can still kind of get that in and that style of training. Because it's one thing to, do that style of training in general. I feel like it's just really, really, I don't even want to know, like, you feel very accomplished when you finish a workout like that, especially if you do them like consistently, maybe like one or two a week. But yeah, there's still ways to kind of get it done and then compete. And I had a very like generic goal of finishing in less than an hour and a half. And I don't know if you guys actually like said out loud or even internally like what you wanted to finish in. But crossing the line and doing it under that time without being able to run was a pretty sweet feeling for me, selfishly.
yeah, I mean, I love running, and for me, like, it was kind of the perfect combination of running and training. And so when I first heard of HYROX, I was like, that's definitely something I want to try. So like I feel like it's really like accessible for anyone. You just have to, like, if you're someone who doesn't feel like they can do it now, it's like, okay, we'll just dedicate some time. Like we'll always be happy to work with you guys on like a structured training program to help you get ready for it. But honestly, it's like my favorite thing about competing is just challenging yourself in a way that you typically wouldn't, and like seeing what you're capable of. And like that's what I love about competing, and that's what I love about HYROX and the Ironman and running and all of that stuff. So like if you're someone who's interested in that, like I encourage you just to like do it. Just sign up for that race. It's going to be scary, but at the end of the day, like if you believe you can do it, like you can do it. I guarantee it.
yeah, the training's a lot of fun. Sometimes training for like a long endurance race can get a little dry after a couple months. What I really enjoyed about the last couple months training for it was I was doing a different type of workout every day. I wasn't just running. So the training and the preparation for it's a lot of fun, and it's a good combination of multiple different types of working out, which I had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, and to echo the same sentiment, like definitely uncomfortable to put yourself out there and do something like that you don't really know how it's going to go. But I think it's really cool to, finish, you get a little whatever finisher patch, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like, especially when you're done, you're like, dude, where's my car sticker? I'll just join the half Ironman kind of club where it just says HYROX or something like that on it to feel good about it, you know. So you definitely get that feeling of accomplishment of doing something that you weren't sure how you were going to perform over time. But that's awesome. So yeah, I don't really have a ton else. I don't want to keep you guys for too long, but I am gonna kind of just close out and just say thank you too for, you know, letting me bully you into bully you into doing the race in general. I feel like it was awesome to do. Like, one thing that I'll say is community is like king or queen, I guess, depending on who you are. And I feel like it was so cool to have like Pat down there, Mia, Brady, and family and friends all down there too. It was like the only thing that better than doing, you know, things that help you be healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, like kind of the whole spectrum, is doing them out there with friends and being able to spend some time together. So I truly valued that, hanging out with you guys, seeing Ben and all those things too. So thank you guys for coming out and I guess humoring me and coming to do the race too.
Yeah, thank you for organizing it. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I mean, I got to meet. I had never met Pat before. I'd never met Brady, so it was awesome meeting everyone and just kind of getting everyone together in Anaheim. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was a blast, man. Thanks for pressuring me into it. It was fun. Now we just gotta figure out the next one we're gonna sign up for.
It wasn't too much pressure for you too, you know. I had to pressure Brady a little bit more. Well, cool. If any of you guys liked what you heard, give us a like and share this with a friend if they're training for HYROX. And we will see you guys next time.